Hi, I'm Elle. I'm a scientist who loves to cook, and this is Kitchen Protocols. Today, we make cheesecake. Apple-filled, caramel-topped cheesecake. It's gonna be good. Let's take a second just to go over some of the tools first. We have our measuring spoons, measuring cups, a delightful mug in which to melt our butter, spoons, spatulas, at least one knife, if you have it, a vegetable peeler.
You'll also need a springform pan.
I'll be using my KitchenAid stand mixer. I will also be using my food processor. If you don't have one, that's fine. We'll go over alternatives.
Several ingredients are needed for the cheesecake, so we'll break this down into 3 stages. The first one being making the crust. Before starting the crust, it's best to prepare the pan. I used a combination of cooking spray and parchment paper so that it wouldn't stick to the sides or bottom. The first step is to combine your spices and sugars and salt into a bowl, melt your butter for later, and prepare the cookies in the food processor. You're going to want to pulse this until they become very fine crumbs before adding the spices and sugar, and then the butter. All of this needs to be pulsed together until it's easily poured out and put into the prepared springform pan. Using your hands, you can press the crust down and up the sides. I like to go about 1/2 inch up the sides before it's baked for 25 minutes. No food processor? No problem. There's always another way.
If you don't have a food processor, you can simply put the graham crackers into a plastic bag and use a rolling pin and brute force.
Once completed into a powder, add to a bowl. You can then add your spices and sugars and butter and just mix by hand before adding it to the pan. The next stage is to cook the apple filling for the cheesecake. The first part of the filling is, of course, the apples. They need to be washed and peeled and cut up before they can go into the pan to be cooked. So after peeling the apple, you'll see any brown spots that need to be removed. You can then go ahead and remove the core and seeds and chop the apple into about 1/2 to 1/4 inch cubes, anything that's fairly bite-sized. We want these to cook quickly. Adding them to the pan, next I add the butter, cinnamon, cardamom, then the nutmeg, and finally just a little bit of cloves. I've also added just a tiny pinch of salt along with the brown sugar. I allowed this to cook for about 15 minutes over a medium-low heat until they were soft and caramelized, before putting them into the pre-baked crust and spreading out the apples into a thin layer. That way everyone gets a nice piece of apple in every bite. Stage 3 is the cheesecake filling. This stage has the most ingredients associated with it, so get them in order before you get going. The first prepping stage is the lemon zest and juicing. Set that aside for later. Next, I like to crack all of my eggs into one bowl before using them. You'll want to use your paddle mixer in your bowl. Step is to cream all of the cream cheese and sugars together before adding eggs one by one until they're smooth, followed with the sour cream, flour, salt, and the vanilla, lemon zest, and lemon juice. All of that needs to be combined until smooth before being poured over the prepared crust and apple filling. Use that scraper to get every bit of this filling into the pan. This filling is a great base recipe and can be altered to add almost any sort of flavor you'd like to have in your cheesecake. Once ready, the cheesecake will bake for an hour and a half before being removed to cool completely at room temperature. Stage 4 is the easiest of all the stages. It involves only 2 ingredients, caramel and whole milk. Put your caramel pieces in a microwave-safe bowl and top with milk. Microwave for 30 seconds at a time, stirring in between each segment until completely liquid and pourable. Pour on top of the cooled cheesecake and let cool before you take your first cut. It's now time to reveal the final delicious product. After the caramel finally cooled, which for me was the next day because I wasn't going to cut into it at 2 a.m., I removed the spring form and the parchment paper and went in for my very first cut. The first cut is beautiful, everything else is an absolute mess. But if you want details on how to cut properly, but also for the recipe for this video, go to the description box and click on the link below, take you to my blog. Yes, I ate most of this cheesecake on my own and I regret nothing. Hope you all enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time.